You know,
even just eye contact. This is something I write about briefly in the book. It's a one thing you get in the spiritual world with gurus of various flavors is you get this commitment to really intense eye contact.
Tom Cruise.
Yeah, that's right.
What does he say about Tom Cruise when
really?
he talks to you? He's like,
yeah, well,
interesting, Sam.
It
That's
is
amazing.
It is a Scientology thing, yeah.
He just locks up on you, and you just want to believe him.
Yeah. Well, but it's incredibly intrusive, and there's every version of it. There are people who are just non-neurotic. They don't feel any impulse to look away, right? They're not uncomfortable making silent eye contact with somebody. They're not constantly throwing their words into the space because they're uncomfortable, and yet they're just available and they're just looking at you, and their attention is free because they're not busy. They're not worried that about what you're thinking about them, and they're just present. And these people can tend to make highly unusually intense eye contact, which is to say, completely unbroken eye contact. And then there's psychopaths who do it, and it's a real power game where it's just they're running something. They have a very different agenda, but they're also comfortable, eye fucking you and just doing it from a place of aggression. But it was interesting when I got into meditation, and early on, I was 20, 21, and got really into meditation, and this is a period where I was doing a lot of psychedelics, and one of the experiences you've probably had on psychedelics is the amazing experience of just looking into somebody's eyes on acid or mushrooms and just having that just open a kind of an inner landscape of profundity or seeming profundity where you're just, you can just be staring into somebody's eyes silently for an eternity, or what seems like an eternity. And what often happens to people is that after having experiences like this, then looking into people's eyes can become a way of really of kind of activating that state of mind, where you just being committed to looking into people's eyes and never looking away can be a way of sort of introducing that sort of liquid psychedelic experience, interpersonally. And I was sort of into that for a while, and so I was kind of walking through life, like I guess Tom Cruise does, just
people in the eye,
just basically, just like, yeah, exactly, just like, oh, I'm just going to go with it, let's see where this goes, and I'm just never going to look away from anyone ever again. And you start having, I mean, it's intrusive, and I stopped doing it, but you start having unusual experiences. The first thing you do is you discover everyone else who's doing that for whatever reason. So all of the psychopaths and the Scientologists and everyone comes out of the woodwork, because there's some number of people walking around Earth at this moment who are playing that game, who are just always, like, you look into their eyes and it's just eye lock for as long as you're going to stay, and they're never going to look away. Mm-hmm. And so whether it's a barista at Starbucks or whether it's just somebody who is 50 feet across the room at a party, you make eye contact, they're not going to be the first one to look away. And so you get into these really weird encounters. And I remember this one party I went to where I was sitting on a couch, and I looked across the room, and there was this guy looking at me, and there was probably 40 feet between us, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and then it was just like War of the Warlocks. It's like we're like neither of us were going to look away, right? And it just be that I was doing a lot of meditation, and I was was probably taking acid once a month, so I was pretty tuned up for this kind of game where it's just like I had no problem making eye contact with some strange guy 40 feet away, and after a certain point he jumped up and kind of raced over to me, and we had a problem. He's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And there was like so what I was doing was so intrusive, but he had his own game going, because he didn't look away, right?
Right.
He was available for it. But in any case, when you walk through life like this, you discover that there are a lot of people doing this for whatever reason, and it's you definitely have unusual encounters with strangers.
I had one on a train once when I was a kid. I was probably like 16 or 17 years old in Boston, and it was some guy, and we were sitting across from each other, and we looked at each other, and and he looked at me and he gave me like a little extra look to get me to look away,
Right.
like a little extra,
Right.
and I didn't, and I was like, what's going on here? And for whatever reason, it wasn't like a conscious practice. I just decided I wasn't going to look away. With act of defiance, being a teenager, and he like progressively got more and more angry, and then my level of stress raised up to the point where like, am I gonna have to fight this old motherfucker? Like we're gonna have to go at it because we're staring at each other. And then finally something happened. One of us broke, but we didn't have a confrontation. But I remember the intensity of this lock with me and this guy looking at each other, and he's fucking looking like, what the fuck are you looking at?
Yeah.
And I don't remember how it resolved, but it did. There was no communication. There was nothing. But I remember very specifically thinking, like, this is so weird. All we're doing, there's obviously some aggression being displayed here. We're looking at each other in the eyes, and this guy just don't want to turn away, and I've decided I'm not going to turn away for whatever reason. And here it's like a moment that I remember to this day, 30 years later, it's still in my head for no reason at all. Just me and this fucking guy looking at each other on the train. It's just
it's well, it is a very primal thing, and it's a biological transgression. I mean, we're primates. So you do this to a macaque or any monkey or ape, and they're not into it. You're walking in. I remember I was in Nepal a lot, and there are these monkeys that basically now mug people. They're so used to just showing up with their troop and demanding food that you need to just throw whatever you've got in your hand on the ground. But the making eye contact with a primate, not even just a primate, a dog is an aggressive thing to do.